In the next 30 minutes on the marketplace, former Finance Minister Seth Terkper expresses worry about the country's rising debts, a situation he believes, if not curtailed, could throw government's program out of gear.
Ghana is going to end up in a very critical, debt, fiscal situation, which is what dictates many things. And remember, the IMF just suggested, I think last month, that Ghana should start considering a suspension.
Also, engineers call for more female participation in impact solutions. As we mark World Engineering Day, we will engage the Vice President of the Women in Engineering, Engineer Naki Tete, on this particular development. We have all these stories and more coming up shortly in this edition of The Marketplace. I'm Charles Aite. We have more after this break. Hello and welcome. The former Finance Minister Seth Terkper says President Akufo-Addo has the power to appoint any of his cabinet ministers to present the 2021 budget to Parliament. Finance Minister designate Ken Ofori-Atta is presently on a medical leave in the United States, recovering from COVID-19 complications. But Joy Business gathers that Trade Minister designate Alan Tremantin has been penciled down by President Akufo-Addo to present the full-year budget to Parliament next Friday. Mr. Terkper tells Joy Business that there is no time left for government to delay in presenting the budget, since Parliament has limited time to debate and approve it.
On behalf of the President, that is when the work of Parliament begins. So it's substantive. And first of all, the budget preparation itself starts, around about April, May, or earlier. And so the absence of the minister may not affect the content of the budget itself, right? Just some tweaking. Why? Because before even the elections, under the Public Financial Management Act, and this is now codified in the law, the budget preparation should begin by a certain date. A cabinet strategy paper should be prepared for cabinet, giving the policy rationale. The estimates should be sent to Parliament and presented to Parliament, to cabinet and presented to Parliament by a certain, date. And all this in relation to the ensuing year, which means that the 2021 budget process started in 2020. Now, let me make an observation. This process is so finite and, I would say, compared to many developing countries, polished for us, in that when the expenditure in advance of appropriation was presented, even though it was meant for 3 months, right, for government to run up to the end of March, there was another line for 2021 estimates. That itself is the actual budget for 2021. So if you go to that, you will see an idea, an indication of the 2021 budget already as part of the expenditure in advance of appropriation. So what was left is the policy, which will be read, which will be in that thick book. The numbers, the estimates are known. The budget is an estimate, so those estimates are known. And for as long as ministries, departments, and agencies were involved in the budget hearing for their compilation, all the ministries know probably their allocation and things by now. So I would say that that is a positive side to say that there's no need to panic excessively.
Well, meanwhile, Mr. Terkper is worried about the state of the economy, particularly the rising debt with which he says has reached unsustainable levels and the huge financing gap which could throw government's program out of gear. According to him, all the indices from renowned international research institutions are pointing to a difficult time for the Ghanaian economy. He therefore does not want governments to blame COVID-19 for the economic woes created.
If you take those outstanding liabilities, and even the recent, vetting that is taking place, you may have heard, ministers like the Rhodes and others talking about 3 billion and other amounts in energy owing. And if you consider that the arrears provision in the budget. And going forward, okay, let me talk about the 2020 budget, which did not change with the media review of COVID. It's only 500 million. So if you look at it, even if I grant that, the arrears is likely to be about 1.5 billion, that already, in addition to what has been disclosed as footnotes, should increase the 13.5%, which government itself, which after the computation, 11, you add what was in the footnotes, it becomes, 13%. If you add some of these arrears, which would have accrued before December, then it means our deficit, again, like Moody's, Fitch, and others are saying, is going to be above 15% at the end of the year. So that should tell you, that Ghana is going to end up in a very critical, debt, fiscal situation, which is what dictates many things. And remember, the IMF just suggested, I think last month, that Ghana should start considering a suspension of its debt. The facilities that's available to COVID. Now, on account of COVID. But that would be a second call on account of COVID for Ghana. Remember, we went to the fund to get 1 billion, Ghana cedis, US dollars, which is about close to 6 billion, Ghana cedis. And for all this, we are now being asked to seek another, dispensation on account of COVID. Should lend credence to the fact that the situation was probably more critical, than COVID, and it cannot all be attributed, to COVID.
Former Finance Minister Seth Terkper talking to us about the budget presentation, which will be held next week Friday by Alan Tremantin, the Trade Minister designate. You're still watching Marketplace with me, Charles Ayete. We're taking a short break. When we come back, we'll talk engineering this day. Hello and welcome. Now, World Engineering Day offers an opportunity to highlight engineers and engineering achievements in the modern world, and of course, improve understanding of how engineering and technology are central to modern life and for sustainable development. In Ghana, many young ones are making history, with their inventions and impact solutions to daily problems in the country. We can talk about the engineering female student at the Methodist Girls Senior High School who won this year's robotic competition. We could talk about the young JHS student who assembled his own version of a car. In fact, he drove it to school. And of course, we can also speak of a group of students at the Accra Technical University, as you can see on your screen there, who have gained world attention for inventing a robotic arm for industrial purposes. The list goes on and on and on. But these are unusual times to be an engineer. The president of the Federation of African Engineering Organization, Engineer Carlin Bushdit, in her address to mark World Engineering Day says, and we're going to be putting up that on the screen, that Africa needs engineers more than ever. This was a particular statement she made as we embarked on the World Engineering Day. Of course, being the first female engineer to head a male-dominated field, Engineer Carlin Bushdit is particular about the participation of women and girls in engineering. Here's her quote, as you can see on screen. We call for a greater participation of females in engineering. The current situation in which, on average, less than 20% of females are involved in producing our engineering solutions will not serve as well. Thankfully, we're joined in the studio by the Vice President of the Women in Engineering, the person of Engineer Naki Tete Anowe. I believe I got the name right. And she's going to be helping us understand the remit, everything that has to do with engineering in this our day and age. Engineer, we're so grateful that you could join us on a Friday afternoon.
Thank you.
And I mean, having to watch, and even read from Engineer Carlin, it begs the question, what could be the cause of less than 20% of statistics being female engineers?
I think it's basically the myth around it, where a lot of people think that engineering is more masculine. And then the learning of science and mathematics is also a contributing factor.
I see.
And that's one of the major things we are trying to put across, to demystify these things that prevents
people from having to practice
Yes.
what journalism is all about. But I know it's also very interesting to note that this year's World Day celebrating engineers has to do with the impacts that it's going to have on, impact solutions, problems around the world. We're talking of a healthy planet, having to adapt to the sustainable goals. We know that the women engineering, you are also coming up with specific arrangements to ensure that this comes true. Walk us through some of them.
Yes, so as women in engineering, we are going to focus on some of the SGDs that actually affect women the most, like the SGD 5, gender inequality, sustainable fuel and all that. So that's what we are going to focus on. And because we are not in normal times, we're going to use our digital means to at least advocate for equality. As you said, 20% of us are in the practicing field, and even in the schools, it's less. And so we're going to do advocacy through this medium, using short videos and all that to disseminate this kind of demystify engineering and bring us solutions where we can practically do things that we can practically do to be able to help women in this call. And so immediate program we have is to have a forum at our engineering conference this year, that's in March, end of March, where we're going to put women in the various divisions and talk about certain SDGs that affect women.
That's great.
So we're going to have professional engineers in those fields, talk about those challenges and practical ways we can help solve these problems so that we have a healthy planet.
So I believe you also have some plans for, the students across the various schools, the universities as well. Yes,
every year usually we will go to secondary schools and junior high and primary and talk girls into, especially girls, about STEM, that's science, technology, maths, and all that, engineering. So as we are not in normal times, we can't be able to go to them physically as we do. So as we're going to use our digital platforms to be able to do these things, to disseminate these information across to these, and then encourage them to take up engineering.
Well, I think it's very interesting a discussion, but once again, when it comes to engineering, each and every one of us have our own perception about the whole field. When I was growing up, I had my own exceptions to engineering. I had to opt for general science, general arts, and not even science, let alone engineering, because it all boils down to some of the myths and perceptions that not just myself, but cultures, economies, the whole world has had to attach to that of engineering. I just want us to pull up some of the myths that surrounds that of engineering. The very first one is that engineers have a boring career. That's the first myth that so many people have. If you just search on Google, one main thing is that engineers, they have a very boring career. How true is that? Demystify this myth for us.
I don't think we have a boring career.
Sure?
Yes.
What's the proof?
The proof is that you're passionate about what you're doing.
Okay.
And you're doing it to make the world a better place, to make people happy. Assuming there's a project where there's a water going to a village. The joy of seeing people happy, it's not boring. You're satisfying a desire and you're solving a problem. So I don't think it's boring. And if it comes to the social settings, we do have fun, yes. We'll
come to that. But the very second myth that we're going to be pulling up on your screens is that engineers need to be math wizards. When I was growing up, I was told that for me to become an engineer, I must be very good in maths. How true is this? Are all engineers mathematic, nerds?
I wouldn't say you have to be a nerd in mathematics, but I would say that you just have to understand the principles of mathematics. Yes, and it's easy to understand the principles of mathematics. I think basically it's more psychological because people just have that, people are just told, maths, dear deal.
Exactly.
And immediately you have that in your subconscious. It works somewhere against, but I don't think it's difficult. You just have to understand the principles, and that's it. You don't have to be a nerd.
Okay. So you don't have to be a nerd in mathematics.
No, you just have to understand the principles in mathematics.
I see. Well, the very third one is that engineers are confined to one job location. That's the third myth that we shall be pulling on your screens. The fact that you guys are just confined in one space. You wake up in the morning, you go to field. When I was interacting with you, actually, you told me that you're about going on field. Is it true? Is this myth really true?
It's not about being at one location, one job per se. We have people who do soft side, people who do designs who are indoors. There are people who are outside who supervise, and it's all over the place. And you can even swap because we have broad engineering fields, and then they have sub. So I can tell you that I moved from one engineering field to another one.
Oh, really?
I did agric engineering in my first degree, but I moved to civil to do water and sanitation.
Oh, wow.
So it's not that boring, it's not that, but they are, yes, stiff or cast in stone, let me put it that way. It's something that you can move depending on your interest and because depending on the solutions you want to solve.
Okay, so it's not all about one field. You could migrate to other aspects. Interesting.
Project management is also there, so it's not.
Let's take a look at the very fourth one, a discussion that we're even having this afternoon, the myth that engineering isn't for women. Help us demystify this one as well. I can see you're just smiling because indeed you are an engineer in your own right, the Vice President of Women in Engineering. What do you think, first of all, is informing this particular myth?
Yes, I think maybe initially there were a lot of men in there, so then later on women. And I think it was the fear of STEM, studying science and mathematics probably. So we have quite a number of men against the women. As you said, 20%, as Engineer Carlin said. But it's not for men, it's for everybody. Yes. So if I can do it, it means every girl can do it.
Okay.
Yes, so it's not for men alone, it's for everybody. And as I said, because initially we had a lot of men, it's now that women are getting into it, and we are also advocating more women to go into it, explaining to them that they can do it because it's not difficult. Okay. Difficult in quotes anyway. But then it's something that they can also do. It's
not as complicated as we're seeing behind the screen.
It could be as complicated as we are seeing, but I can tell you can find women in there. Okay. Women in NASA and all those places. So women can do it. And as we said, women can also do it better.
Exactly, exactly. Well, let's take a look at the very fifth myth, the fact that engineers can fix everything. This is a myth. I even hold this particular myth that so long as you're an engineer, you could fix everything. How true is this?
Yes, engineers can fix everything with other stakeholders.
Okay.
Yes. I won't say we can do it in isolation, but with all the other stakeholders involved, we can fix everything. Everything is actually engineering. You wake up in the morning, you open your tap to brush your teeth, it's water. It's the work of an engineer.
But I think this particular myth sits on the fact that you as an engineer, you could fix a television set.
As in fixing. Yes, because
help it out.
As I said, with various stakeholders, you should be able to fix everything, but not as a person or as an engineer, because we have a lot of categories. We have so many engineering, wide range, even in medical fields. We have biomedical engineering and all that.
So it's important to know that engineering is not cast in stone.
Yes.
It's not bolts and nuts.
No, there are people who deals with bolts and nuts. There are people who deal with water. Even sanitary boiler. There are engineers that deal with boiler. Yes, you see. So we have different.
Let's move to the very last one. The fact that engineers, my favorite, engineers lack social and personal skills. So many engineers out there, and I bet to be very real on this. Most of them look so boring, and this myth speaks to this particular perception. How true is this?
I must say that initially, as you said, men alone are boring. But I mean, as time is changing and all these things are changing, I can say that a lot of women in there trying to change the dynamics, trying to make it a bit soft so that it doesn't look like we don't have social life. We do have social, even in the training field, as in school, social and other personal skills are being put into the curriculum, even entrepreneurship, just to make it a bit softer so that we don't look like we don't have it. And when you are practicing, we have the continuous development, which includes all these soft skills. So it's not that we don't have a social, we do have.
Is it that the job is so difficult? I mean, it's part of a myth that you have already debunked.
I think every job is difficult, depending on what's the challenges.
So how is your social life like? Tell me.
Personally, I'm a social freak.
I can see that.
Yes, I'm a social being. I like to party. I like to hike. I like to. That's cool. I like to hike. I like to organize stuff and all that. So I'm a very social being.
Interesting. Yeah. It's so refreshing having to hear from you, your side on engineering, everything that we have to know about it, and the very arrangements that you're making to ensure that women are embracive of everything that has to do with engineering. Engineer, we're so grateful once again that you joined us. She is the Vice President of the Women and Engineering, helping us, demystify specific myths as we join the rest of the world to celebrate World Engineering Day. You're still watching The Marketplace. I believe you enjoyed this discussion, but to other stories, Harriet Thompson has been appointed the new British High Commissioner to Ghana. Of course, she took over from that of Ian Walker, who was the former British High Commissioner to Ghana. And a little bit about her. She was the British High Commissioner in Benin formerly, and she succeeds, as I've already stated, Ian Walker in this particular regard. She took up her appointment. Indeed, it's going to run somewhere in summer 2021, somewhere in June, actually. And prior to her appointment, she was the head of mission and the deputy to the British High Commissioner in Nigeria. Already, 3 key things could stand on her plate as she takes office. First being the Ghana-UK trade, of which we've had some ratifications as we speak. Second being the fact that UK is much more into expanding access to markets for women in various business fields. And the third being Brexit, what's going to hold for Ghana and other West African countries. These will be her priorities as she comes over. But of course, this has been the edition of Marketplace with me, Charles Aite. For me and the rest of the team, many thanks for watching.